Knowles on the News. Susan Knowles.
Well, here we are again on another day, and we have something new, I guess, in America to watch for now, and that is when is the next time Hillary is going to have a coughing fit that she can't stop. I'm sure you've already heard by now that over this past holiday, on Labor Day, Hillary was in Cleveland, Ohio, and she had two fits where she could not stop coughing. One, she was on stage and she was trying to introduce people, and she started coughing, and true to what Hillary does, instead of turning the mic off or walking away from the stage and composing herself, she holds the mic up and she continues to cough right into the microphone. It's amazing. And I guess it went on, I don't know which one, maybe that one or the one on the plane, but it went on for like 4 minutes. And the one on the plane, it's really interesting as well, because there's several things that happen. And let me talk about the plane and what happened there, and then let's talk about the video of her speech in Ohio. When she was on the plane, she started talking to the press people that follow her around everywhere and fly with her. Not really anybody who is ever any anti-Clinton person. It's usually those people who are just, oh, hi, Miss Hillary, can I get you anything? Who want to sit here? Oh, yes. They were just joking around with each other and things like that. So she started coughing and couldn't answer the questions, and got to the point where it just kind of like cuts off her speech, right? And she turns around. Somebody hands her a water bottle. And, when you get a water bottle, you expect to see, your typical water bottle with the big label on it from whatever brand it is, Crystal Geyser, Fiji, whatever it is. And I had to go back because when I first looked at it, I didn't see anything on it at all, any kind of label. It looked very clear. And when I went back, there was it looked like a square, perhaps, in size, just a very small, maybe less than 2 inches by 2 inches square of something. I mean, that's the way it appeared to me. And I'm thinking, wow, that's odd. I don't know what brand would have that on there. I mean, you would want to have, again, a huge label so that people can recognize it from walking towards the aisle of which water do I buy. They see yours. And she takes it at first and then turns around and kind of asks for something else, and they give her a cup, like a little plastic cup with water in it. And she hands them the water bottle. Now that in and of itself is kind of odd. And I thought, why would she do that? And, the first thing that came to my mind is, okay, she's a presidential candidate, nominee. Maybe she's concerned, a little paranoid, if you will, that somebody's going to spike something she has or try to poison her, because she's so important. I mean, so maybe that she thought the water bottle was open. Maybe she thought it was somebody's who had already, had drank out of it. I don't know. I really don't know what she was thinking. But then, when you get somebody hands you a cup like that, a little plastic cup, well, it's totally open. I mean, anybody could spike it. Anybody could drink out of it. Anybody could do anything to it. So obviously that wasn't it. And so she takes that and says, I'll be back in a minute, and then walks in the back, and we don't see her for, you can see it's quite a while, because if you watch the whole thing like I did, again, the press people, they continue to yuck it up with each other, laughing, joking, ha ha ha. And somebody comes up from the Clinton side and says, oh, you're keeping us from our lunch. And they make a big joke about it. And nothing is said about, is she okay? Is she, hacking up a lung back there? What is she doing? I mean, it's like it wasn't even happening. Oh no, I don't even think they mention her. It's just like, oh, no big deal. This happens all the time, which, it is beginning to happen all the time. But it's normalizing something that we all know isn't normal. Now, the other thing that is really hard to watch, and you'd have to see this and I in slow motion. Now, I don't think this is Photoshop. People are talking about it. If it is Photoshop, then I apologize. But when she's on the stage in Ohio, she takes a sip of water out of a glass, not out of a bottle. Now, most anyone who's giving a speech is going to ask for a water bottle, whether it's a pastor in a church, another nominee for president, during the debates. They usually aren't handed a glass of water. They're given a bottle of water with a lid on it, so obviously so that it doesn't spill and things of that nature. But Hillary has a glass underneath the podium. She takes out the glass, takes a sip of water, and now this is going to gross a lot of people out, and again, it grossed me out when I watched the film. Something comes out of her mouth and into the water, and it looks pretty substantial, and it's sort of golden in color. I don't know what it is, not going to speculate, but I'm wondering if when she asked for that cup on the plane and got, a little plastic cup of water, did she need it to be open like that to, for lack of a better term, spit something back into the glass? Or into the cup in that case. I don't know. I don't know. But it's obviously extremely odd behavior going on. And she came back on the plane, came back up front finally, and said, it's really horrible. Every Labor Day I get this. I had this last Labor Day. And it's my allergies. They kick up. It's pretty bad, and there's nothing I can do about it, that type of thing. And, of course, when she was in Cleveland, she joked while she was coughing at the podium, I talk a lot, and I'm allergic to Trump, and, and she coughs. Well, what's odd is if it's allergies, and, everybody can have allergies, but the people in Cleveland, her staff, they are accompanying her in Cleveland, came out and said, it's allergies. The pollen count's very high today in Cleveland, and that's what's wrong with her. Now, somebody on Twitter, this is so great, somebody on Twitter comes out and says, no, that's not true, and here is what it really is. And they show that the pollen count, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just fine. And so, it's amazing. It's one cover up after another with these people. But what is also funny is, again, she's talking about, I get this every September. Well, she's been coughing now for quite some time. And the two most recent ones that I can recall, one is when she was speaking in Des Moines, Iowa, and this was January 25th, when the pollen count is extremely high in that part of the country in the winter in Iowa. And the other time, when the pollen count, again, it's so high, so you can understand. February 17, when she's speaking in Harlem, New York. We all know how high the pollen count can be there. And it's funny because, I used to think, and a lot of other people used to think, that she used her coughing when she didn't want to answer questions like she did during the Benghazi committee hearings. But, I think we all now know that there's something definitely wrong with her. Now, again, it could be allergies of some sort. It could be anything else, but it needs to be checked out. I would be asking the same thing if Donald Trump, if this were happening to him, I would be saying we need to find out what's wrong. If he's got a temporary condition, let's find out. If it's something that's chronic, let's find out. What are the ramifications? What does this mean? Donald Trump appears to be in pretty good health. I haven't seen him stumble. I haven't seen him coughing, any type of unusual medical behavior at all. I haven't seen that. We have seen that with her. And again, when she was being helped up the stairs, a few years ago or whatever, it was winter. You can kind of say, okay, maybe she didn't want to fall. It's winter. It's slippery. I've been in that type of situation where, I'm 20 years old. You don't want to slip and fall on ice. So that might be an explanation. Okay, I'll grant you that. But she's got people that she's holding on to during the speech at times. She has to have a little step up to get in the limousines that take her places, and then this coughing. And we all know that she was injured in 2012. We all know that. She wore those glasses for a while. Is this part of that? Is it something new? What is it? And I'll tell you, if I were on the airplane with her and she's coughing like that, and you know that the germs in there are just everywhere. Some people have said, well, maybe she has TB. Well, and I said, you better hope not, because it's contagious, and those people that are on the plane with her are going to soon find out if it is or not, probably before we will. Now, we'll probably never hear if it is, but, nonetheless, they'll find out before we do. But I think there's a bigger problem, and for those people who, let's say you're not interested in politics, and you're on the Democrat left, you're not interested in politics, maybe then you should still be interested in the health of somebody who is supposed to lead your interests in this country. And you should be standing up and demanding that she goes to the doctor, and that maybe a neutral doctor, not her own, because that doctor is going to give her a clean bill of health, and if he wants to have a clean bill of health, if you know what I mean. And we need to find somebody else, maybe two doctors, 3 doctors, I don't care, somebody. And have if I can hear the left now saying, well, we're not going to do it unless Trump has to do it. Okay. I mean, it shouldn't have to be like that, but that's the way the left operates. And if that's the only way to get a certification of what her health is like, fine. Send Donald Trump too to the doctor. Send him to the same doctors. I mean, whatever the case. But anyway, those people on the left who are going to vote for Hillary, you should be concerned. I mean, you should be asking yourself, is this going to be another case where, like the times that Eleanor Roosevelt was unofficially running the White House because her husband, who was president at the time, Franklin Roosevelt, couldn't run the White House in the country? Is that what you want? So are we going to have, and this is hard to say, first gentleman, oh God, Bill Clinton, do you want him back in the White House? Is that what it is? You want him running the country for Hillary because you were so enamored with him when he was running for president and was president? Is that what it is? Do you want Bill back in the House? And if you haven't seen Bill lately, I mean, he's not looking so good himself. So, in fact, she looks better than he does at this point. So I think you better maybe, give that a second thought. And if not that, well, what about President Tim Kaine? Do you want that? Because, you're looking at a woman who obviously has some health issues, whatever they may be, whether they're acute, chronic, serious or not. Something is going on, and we're allowing her to just say, oh, it's just allergies. I just have them every day of my life. And, when she was first lady, when she was senator, I don't recall this at all. So, obviously it needs to be looked into. But besides her health issues, sooner or later, one of these actions that she's done, these allegations against her, may stick, okay? And let's say they do, and charges are brought against her, or impeachment charges, whatever the case may be. I know this is far-fetched because it seems like the Clintons, and especially Hillary, they get away with everything. But do you want President Kaine? Is that something that you're okay with? And it could be that, on the left, they're just saying, well, this is what we have, this is who the candidate is, and this is who I'm going with because they have a D next to their name. And for some people on the right, they're doing the same thing. Mark Levin has come out and said that he is voting for Donald Trump. He doesn't like Donald Trump. He's been, advocating against him, but he feels that this is where the country needs to go under his leadership, because if it doesn't, it goes under Hillary's leadership. Whatever. He's obviously voting for Trump because there's an R next to his name. Because he could vote for Hillary. I know he's not that insane, but he could. But he's chosen not to. So if those on the left are saying virtually the same thing, I understand it. But I think those on the left, you have to understand you're in far worse condition with a Hillary Clinton nominee than those on the right with a Donald Trump nominee. I mean, the Clinton Foundation allegations alone should be enough to to send somebody over to the other side. I mean, those people have obviously, they're going to quote unquote look into it, but there have been violations left and right, up and down. I mean, you can't buy the Secretary of State office through the Clinton Foundation. I mean, I guess you can, but I mean, legally you shouldn't be able to do that. So there's going to be a lot of questions in the event that she gets in, or we're just going to sweep it all under the rug, have the DOJ say nothing to see here, let's just move on, have the head of the FBI, Comey, say, oh, well, there's no problem, we're just not going to do anything. I mean, it seems to be the state of our country right now, and this is how we're going. So maybe those on the left are just banking on that to happen, and there'll be no problem, because the way maybe some people are looking at it, or at least the people on the right are looking at it. I don't know if the people on the left are really looking at it this way, but Hillary's not going to be running the country anyway if she's elected. I mean, obviously, she has somebody controlling her, and Tim Kaine would even be a better puppet than Hillary Clinton will be. So, it's all working according to their plan. Otherwise, the Democrats themselves would be coming out and saying, we need to find out what's wrong with this woman. We need a president who is going to at least appear able to serve for 4 years. And they're not doing that. So obviously there is an agenda, and again, it is working to their favor. And you can always just check out the article that I was just talking about. I wrote an article the other day, and it's called The Elephant in the Room, #hacking Hillary. And that's up on theblaze.com/contributions. And you can go there and read that for yourself. And please share it with others so that they can enjoy it as well. And you'll see I've added the tweets that came from the hacking Hillary trend that was going around the other day, and what these people were saying when it was trending. And it's quite funny, some of the people on Twitter. I only had a few there, but I wish I could have put more. And I also have all the videos up from the Benghazi committee hearings and the Ohio, when she's at the podium and when she's on the plane. So you can see all of them there as well. And again, please share those videos. I do appreciate your doing that. And then switching to other news, I don't know if you've heard about this new, relatively new, black-only housing on college campuses now. There have been a couple of universities that have offered this. The University of Connecticut, UC Davis in California, it's up near Sacramento. It's actually in Davis, California, and now Cal State University, Los Angeles. When this is one of the demands that I guess the Black Student Union, or somebody, probably Black Lives Matter for all that we know, somewhere last year made this demand that we want to have black only housing because we want to be protected from the microaggressions. I have to ask you, isn't that what maybe in the civil rights era, maybe the whites were trying to keep blacks protected from microaggressions, and that's why they wanted them to be segregated? Could that possibly be? Yeah. No, that's just as foolish as these people now saying we want black-only housing on college campuses. What they're doing now is they are segregating themselves. Never thought I'd see that happening. I mean, I guess even after the civil rights era, some African Americans were like, what have we done? We don't want to live with these white people. And it's true. Go back and look at your history. And they kind of wanted to have their own neighborhoods. Well, that's not what diversity is all about. That's not what desegregation is all about. It's about learning to live together, good, bad, and different. Everybody has, if you want to look at it, there's a microaggression that would be in every race, including the white race, by the way, meaning that people are going to say something or not like you because of the race that you are, just the way it is. They may not like you because you're female, you're male, you're transgender, you're homosexual, you're heterosexual, you're 5'2", 6'3", whatever the case may be. There's going to be microaggressions that exist. It's called the world. And you have to learn to navigate around that. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that students can ask for a whatever only housing, whatever the case may be, and they are granted that. Again, we are catering to people to the absolute ridiculous point of no return, I think. I was sitting here just thinking, Martin Luther King would just be going, what in the world? I mean, all that work I did to try to get desegregation, and now you want to go back and segregate yourselves. And I tell you, it's only creating more racial division. And I'm sure that these people who are advocating for it, whoever they are, again, I don't think it's necessarily individuals, but these people, again, who call themselves activists, who claim that they're doing whatever for the benefit of other African Americans. Kind of like Colin Kaepernick, who really doesn't put his money where his mouth is. He just, takes a knee now, right? Oh, gosh, that solves the world's problems right there. Just take a knee. But anyway, if you were to say, okay, here's what we're going to do in Cal State Los Angeles, right around that neighborhood, what we're going to do is just put black-only housing in that neighborhood. We're going to have blacks only. We're going to take up this street over here, and nobody else is allowed to move into that street. Let me just tell you something. If you did something that ridiculous, you would have ACLU and every NAACP and everybody else out complaining, boycotting, protesting, perhaps rioting, looting, whatever the case may be, to say you are segregating us, you're taking our rights away, our civil rights, on and on and on. So you tell me how that it's okay for a college to do that and it be deemed absolutely appropriate to segregate people. And I guarantee you the next group that's going to be saying we want our own housing are going to be Muslims. And I think if you want to carry this to the idiotic extreme that it already is, then I think, white people ought to go in there and say, okay, so you have your black-only housing, we want white-only housing. Of course, if you did that, the white-only housing, that would be a hate group, right? But the black-only housing, that's fine. That's absolutely fine because they're just being protected. I want to know, here's the question I want to ask African Americans. How long are you going to allow your government and people connected and listen, this Cal State University Los Angeles, it's a state-run university, right? Okay? These other universities, they get money from the feds, and so does Cal State University. All these universities, they get money from the feds, so they're going to do whatever the feds want them to do. African Americans, we're talking to you. How long are you going to allow the government to protect you? Everything is under the guise of we've got to protect African Americans. Here's what I know about most African Americans, especially the ones that I've met. They're pretty capable of taking care of themselves and protecting themselves and doing what needs to be done. This isn't the 1960s, although it is turning into it very, very rapidly, where people are out, harming African Americans because of the mere fact that they're African American. Okay, we're not there, but I'll tell you, things like this, when the segregation starts again, you're going to turn people back to that. Unfortunately, there are going to be people who don't like that, who are going to be incensed by all of that, and it will absolutely make things worse than make things better. And I think that most black Americans probably know that. But again, your government, whoever they are, and these activists who claim to represent you, they're causing you now to be segregated again. The very thing that Dr. King and others fought against and fought for desegregation. And here it is, in 2016, we're having segregated housing on college campuses. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I can't even believe that we have come to this point and that everybody's okay with it. If those were my children, I would yank them out of that school so fast and bring them back to the real world. And some of these schools, remember the schools where there was a whole bunch of rioting by Black Lives Matter and all that? Guess what? Their attendance is down this year. I think mommy and daddy finally said enough is enough. We're not sending you to a college like that where you're not getting, an education and you're spending your time protesting in the streets with other people. Because we just don't see any validity to it, so we're not going to pay for it. If you want to pay for it, get a job, pay for it. And, of course, that's out of the question. So hopefully some of these other people are going to wake up to that. And I'll tell you, how come other people of color aren't speaking out? How come you're okay with having one group of color given this pedestal treatment when you're not? Where are the Asians? Where are the Hispanics and others who are sitting here saying, how is this fair to us? I think what it is that they just have decided we've got better things to do. We want to concentrate on going to school and getting our education and getting out and trying to get a job or whatever the case may be. But again, because we have all of these activists like Black Lives Matter that are feeding this line of into these people, some black people go along with it. Maybe, like, again, the black unions in the school who said, oh, this is what we're demanding. This is what we want. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Microaggressions. And thanks to people who go out there and continue that lie of, like, oh my gosh, you're just so berated. I mean, come on. You know that isn't true. You know it isn't true. You're looking for stuff. You're looking. And here's what I think. If it's so horrible on campus when you're trying to, stay in your housing, and microaggressions are just so bad that you have to be separated and have your own safe place. Maybe they should name it after the mayor of Baltimore. I think they should name it after her, because name that whole housing unit on every campus after her, because she's the one that started this whole safe place crap. Really? So they should name it after her. But if things are so bad and the microaggressions are so bad in your housing unit, then perhaps what we should do, we should segregate you from the classroom too. Because obviously if you have to, God forbid, go in and sit next to people who aren't African American, you run the risk of microaggression. And we just wouldn't want that to happen now, would we? So maybe what we should do, we'll have a separate classroom for you with, of course, an African American teacher only, because you can't have that, with, my gosh, I can't even imagine the microaggression that might come out of the mouth of somebody who, let's say, is Hispanic, who's teaching the class, or a white person who might be teaching. Oh my gosh, how do you function with the microaggression around you all the time? So let's have separate classes. We'll charge you, probably more. We'll have to charge you more because we're going to hold them. We're going to have special teachers. Everything's going to be special. Now, of course, you're not going to like that. You're not going to want to have. You're going to claim inequality by the fact that we have to have, special classes and we have to charge you more. That'll be, oh my gosh, you're discriminating against us. But the segregation, no, that's not discrimination. But let's keep with the program here. Charging you more is going to be considered a violation of your civil rights. I think the only alternative then is to just have you sit in your housing units, your safe place. We'll hook you up so that you can just watch from your computer screen what's going on in the classroom. Hopefully you can tolerate any microaggression that might be going on. I mean, I think what's so good about it, you can mute it if you have to, or you can, maybe you could nominate some, an African American student who maybe for extra credit, okay, who goes and goes there and broadcasts, right, from the classroom, and that person can hit a delay button in the event some microaggression slips out. So that way they can mute it before it gets to you. I think this is genius. And again, this way we won't have to charge you more because we can just, hook up the internet and you can see everything. And you have your guy who's sitting there with a mute button. That'll be wonderful for you. And you can live in this little bubble and you'll never have to face microaggression again because probably once you graduate, you're going to go back home and live with your parents anyway, right? I mean, isn't that what a lot of millennials are doing these days? So you can live at your parents' house and hopefully, because they're from a different generation. Let's assume that they might be African American and they're from a different generation. The people who had to actually go out and face things like racism and discrimination. I mean, some of those people did, not all of them. Their parents probably more so than them. But they've gone out there and they're out in the real world now and they're learning how to cope. Whereas you're not asked to learn how to cope. You're going to be protected. So all you have to do is go home. Mommy and Daddy will continue to pay for whatever you need. You don't even have to leave your house. You can designate that as a safe place for you. Never have to leave. You don't have to watch TV. So that you might see some microaggression there. So you don't have to do that. I think maybe your parents could put some, I don't know, like the parental control things that they have on TV. They could put those on there on anything that they know clearly might contain some microaggression. They'll just go ahead and put some parental control so you won't accidentally even go there. I mean, how good is that? When you go to a college, you're protected from microaggression. You go back home, you live with your parents. You don't have to go out and work in the real world, and you can just stay there. And you will never have to worry about microaggression again. Unbelievable. I mean, I think that's the type of world you're probably going to exist in. And then maybe you can go out and advocate for a segregated neighborhood, segregated grocery stores, segregated, physicians' offices, wherever you need to go. Perhaps that you can go out and I know it's hard, but you could also. Here's the thing: you don't want to go out and talk door to door because again, there might be microaggression out there. All right, when you go to a door and you knock on the door and somebody comes to the door that is not African American, there may be some issues. All right. So what you want to do, you just want to sit at home. You can go online and you can broadcast out. And that way you can get your message to the masses without having to worry about microaggression. I'm telling you, I got it all planned for you. You just, you follow what I've said and you will never have to worry about microaggression again. And see, that's what it's going to come to because we're going to start with college campuses and then we're going to start with other things. And before you know it, I think what you should do is go back and talk to some people in your ancestry, if there are those that have faced discrimination of some kind. And I hate to tell you this, but we all have. Even, I don't care what color you are, what color your skin is, you have faced some type of discrimination in your life. But go back and talk to those people and find out what it was like for them. Find out what it was like to live during the times when people were segregated, because that's where you're headed. You think it's only going to be on your college campuses, but you're going to turn everything around, and you're headed right back to segregation, and you're going to bring yourselves right back there. And Black Lives Matter is going to help you get there. So you might as well go and find out what that was like. I mean, and just think about yourself and what segregation means for you, and not, think about the advantages for yourself, because I know that's what you're doing when you're talking about in college. But I think you don't want to focus on what the negatives could be, because obviously you haven't given that any thought now, so don't be thinking about it, all right? Just start and keep looking at the advantages for yourself. Don't even worry about the negatives. I mean, I know there are a huge amount of negatives, but you don't even need to worry about that. Just keep going in your make-believe world, in your non-reality existence, and you're going to find yourself living the life of those who lived during desegregation. Except you won't be worried about desegregation. You'll be headed to segregation. And you can ask your great-grandparents, your grandparents, how wonderful was segregation? And I'm sure they'll sit down and tell you all the wonderful things about segregation. Now, it's going to be a short conversation because they're not going to find anything wonderful about it to tell you. But, you can hope that they can tell you something good. Again, I wish you luck in all that you're doing. You're just trying to undo everything that people like Martin Luther King have done for you, which is just so unbelievable that you would want to go backwards rather than forwards. But hey, that's what happens when you're young, when you've had history deleted by progressives so that you no longer know anything about history, or if it's still there, you're not taught it in school and you're not told that it's important. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard young people say, history is boring. I don't want to know about history. And guess what? I was one of those people. I didn't want to learn about history. And I think what the reason is because the teachers made it so boring, it seemed like, oh my gosh, why would I want to know about this? They didn't connect you and tell you how important it is to know about history. That if you don't know about history, you repeat history and why this happens, and show examples and make the subject exciting. They didn't do that. And in fact, a lot of what I learned was ancient history. You talk about boring, but I think too necessary. But at the time, I didn't feel that it was necessary because nobody told me as a young child that it was necessary for me to learn history. I think we do our young people a great disservice by not telling them about history. I don't know, these people who are at these colleges, did you not have Black History Month ever? Were you absent during that time? Do they not offer that anymore? Did you not see what people went through? I mean, it's one thing for you to sit there and say, oh yeah, I know what it's like. No, you don't. You weren't there. Sorry, you weren't there. Most of your ancestors weren't having their colleges paid for by their parents. They couldn't afford to. I mean, again, all these leaps and bounds that you've made, you discount and you don't appreciate it. And you don't appreciate that you have so much more than your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and on and on and on. You sit there in your safe place in school and think that you're in reality. Well, you're not. But good luck with that. Hope the housing's great. Hope you get along well with everybody within your own group, because, again, there won't be any microaggressions and you guys should just get along well together. And hopefully they won't implement this in Chicago, where there are a lot of violence going on between the same racial group, which just happens to be African American at this time. Okay? So let's not have that there, because it may not work out so well for you. There may be a little bit more microaggression there on all races than just the African Americans are experiencing everywhere else, or so these people in Black Lives Matter or these black student unions think that they're getting. I mean, you need to get back into reality, into the real world. But the way society is going right now, I think they're probably pretty much going to support what you're doing. Now here's a question I want to ask you. It's on a different subject. How many of you out there, parents, how many of you have had the talk with your kids? Now, by that I mean sex education. How many of you have sat them down and talked about it? I would say probably not that many. And I guess my question today is, do you think that's a good decision? Now, there's an article out that you won't find because the progressive left doesn't want you to find this. But in Odessa, Texas, there is in West Texas, a Christian pregnancy center that teaches sex education in schools. And it seems that the high school students that they talk to are pretty receptive. Of course, the giggling takes place in the very beginning when they say they're going to be talking about sex education. The first thing that I think of here is that it's really, in a lot of respects, sad that somebody else is teaching your children about sex education other than the parents, because I feel that it's the parents' job to do that. Now, when I was growing up, parents, I don't know, some I think really took more of a stance on that and started teaching their children pretty young about abstinence. I mean, today we can't even mention the word abstinence, my gosh. And then there were other parents, like my parents, they taught us nothing. Now, I don't know if it was because they didn't know anything. I have no idea. I mean, they had 3 children, so they knew something, but they just didn't feel that I guess, that it was their place. I don't know. And I think a lot of times the schools had parents convinced in the South that they could handle everything. So, hey, send them to school. We'll take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. And I can remember, gosh, my school's attempt. I remember we were all called into the auditorium one time, and we were the girls in different classes were called in, like several classes at a time, and this kind of went on throughout the day. And we were called into the auditorium, and the curtains were drawn on the stage, right? And we were on the stage. Now, the reason they did that is, God forbid, a boy would be walking by outside and peek into the auditorium and see what's up on the screen about what was supposed to be sex education was more about young girls having periods, to be honest with you. I guess even some parents didn't tell their children about that. But here we all were, gathered in the dark behind this curtain, and we were learning about the taboos of periods and just a tiny bit, about sex education. And I remember one of the things that we were told is, if you're a girl, Listerine will not kill the germs of sperm, right? That you can't use that. It's not going to work. And apparently somebody did try that, and that's why they were talking about it. But I think it's sad when people have to come to schools, and you'd never be allowed to do that in California that I know of. My gosh. I mean, the only thing that you'd be allowed to do in California is come and hand out, condoms to everybody. But not talk about abstinence, not sound like you're trying to stop them from having sex until they're mature and able to have sex and be responsible. Gosh, we can't do that. That you would get tossed out immediately for doing that. But I think it's a subject, if we're going to kind of try to turn things around. Again, the progressive left has taught your children to have sex anytime they want to have sex, whatever age they want to have sex, that anything goes, and it's okay. And, oh, by the way, STDs are kind of bad, so use a condom and hope for the best, that type of thing. And it's amazing how I think sometimes assume that children are going to just know not to do those things, or that getting pregnant is a bad thing, or getting STDs is a bad thing. So it's like, well, I don't really need to talk to them. They already know that. I think sometimes we assume too much that our children have adult thinking and they're going to know what we as adults know, and they don't. They simply have to be taught, and that's why they have parents, because you have to teach them these things. And I know not everybody, this doesn't apply to every parent. There are a lot of parents who are out there teaching your children what they want them to know and properly, and on and on and on. So those parents, they've got it all together, and they're doing the best that they can. But when you have kids that are, they believe now that statistics sort of show that they're thinking, well, 14 may be a little bit too young. Although when I was going to school, unfortunately, there were 12-year-old girls that were pregnant. And when I've seen at-risk kids, there are, 14, 15-year-old girls with 3-year-old children themselves, or some that are just, getting pregnant. And obviously no one told them about it, or, perhaps they did and they just did whatever they wanted to anyway. But I think it's crucial that we need to get back to teaching the kids that, just the opposite of what the progressives have been teaching your children. If you don't want your children to have sex before marriage, or at least before they're 18 or 21, whatever the case may be, you are going to have to talk to them about why that's important. You're going to have to show them statistics and everything else of why they shouldn't do that. Now, just know that with kids, a lot of times when you show them statistics or what could happen in the future, they don't care. Because for them, it's all about today. That's all that matters. They don't think long term. They think about what matters today. So if you tell them, well, down the road you could have children and you'll have them for the next 18 years or plus that you're taking care of, that means nothing to them. You got to give them reasons why today they should not have children. So it's about the burdens on them today of being pregnant at 14, 13 and having a child and trying to raise that child, and how difficult that would be. And I think we also need to start teaching the children, male or female, but especially females, it seems to really apply to, because they're the ones that get pregnant. The emotional pain that goes along with being pregnant, not having the support of the boy who you had sex with, as he goes away sometimes. I mean, the cases that I saw, typically that was the outcome. That boy just kind of disappeared and the girl was left alone, to take care of the child. We have to teach them what that feels like. What it feels like to not be a child anymore. Those type of things. It's not all about, the act itself. While that is important to talk to them about that from a Christian standpoint or whatever your beliefs are, it's also important to tell them what it does to them psychologically, and it also to be able to talk to them about how it changes their life completely, and really go into that. Because again, when you have these progressives, these Margaret Sanger people, who believe in her philosophy of, hey, if you get pregnant, just go have an abortion, off you go. No problem. Keep having sex. And if we don't teach them the opposite of what is true, because they're teaching them the easy way out, which abortion, in my opinion, is not the easy way out, but that's what they'll have them believe. And they're not telling them about the long-term ramifications. In reading and doing research on people like Margaret Sanger and even like her own children, they were just kind of left with their father, and she kind of went off and did her own thing. So even the children were impacted by her wanting to have sex with other men outside of marriage and anywhere and everywhere and all that. I mean, the kids are affected by the parents not being there for them. And imagine being a young child who's 14 years old, wanting to have a young child's life, what is that going to do to their child? And I don't even think we talk to them very often about what that means for their child. And again, when you're that young, most of it is egocentric thinking, which is just totally on yourself. So you're not thinking about the impact that you may have on another life. And I think we need to do this in such a way that they don't feel like they're being lectured to, but they just understand the realities. I think we've gotten to the point that we're afraid to talk to our children and teach them about reality. And I know it's hard sometimes to understand what reality is, because in our society today, it seems like reality changes every 5 minutes. But you've got to give them some foundation from which to grow. If you don't give a child a foundation, then they're going to have a life of instability. You've got to have something to come back to hold on to when things get chaotic and crazy. And I think that's something that we often fail to do with our children. We don't give them that foundation. And I know a lot of people are, opposed to, let's say, organized religions or going to church or, whatever. It's good in one respect to take children to church or whatever your faith may be, because it does give them a foundation. They may not agree with that foundation. They may grow away from that foundation, but they will always have that foundation to return to in the event that they want to. And it also teaches them about serving others and about the importance of others, not just themselves. So as they grow up in their egocentric world, they can understand that others are important too, and it gives them balance. And if you don't want to take your child to organized religion, then you could have your own Bible study or whatever your faith may be that you do on a regular basis that comes from you. I think it's so important to get back to parents raising their children. Far too long we've allowed and continue to allow the government to raise the children, and then we wonder why they don't think the way we do, why they're not really our children anymore, because they're so brainwashed with what the government wants them to believe. So in order to change that, you're going to have to do something different, and that something different is you're going to have to become more active in your child's life. And I've heard so many people that say, well, I can't tell my child who they can be friends with or what they can do. Yes, you can. If your child isn't 18, they're still a minor, and you can tell them your rules, okay, and expect them to follow your rules. Now, if they're 18 and they're out of the house and they want to go off and be an adult on their own, yeah, you don't have a right to tell them who they can be friends with, what they can do, on and on and on. But you're going to have to stop being afraid of being looked at as, they hate me. It's okay. They won't always hate you. We all at one time or the other didn't like our parents for the decisions that they made on our behalf, because we thought at the time that we knew it all. But there's no child, I don't care how smart they are, they don't know it all. They haven't had the life experience, and they are depending upon you to give that to them. And it's not the school's responsibility. It's your responsibility. And as long as you allow the school to take the reins on everything, then the kids are going to be raised the way the school wants them raised. And maybe if that's what you want, you'll have to be happy with that and be okay with that. That's certainly not the way that I would want my child to be raised. I would want my philosophies, my education, my experience, all of that to be imparted to the child. And again, they're going to do with that what they want to do with that, but at least it would be coming from you. At least it would be what you wanted them to learn, and you tried your best as a parent to give them that information, to keep them grounded, to give them a good foundation, so that when things come along in the future that they're, confused about, or having to make a decision whether to have sex at age 14, you will have already imparted your wisdom to them. And then you'll hope that they will use that wisdom and make a good decision. But if you don't, think about it, if you don't even impart that wisdom to them, and it comes time to make some type of perhaps life-altering decision like that, where are they going to get, where's that foundation coming from? Where are they going to glean from and say, oh, okay, yeah, well, this is what my parents did. Maybe that's, I don't know, let me think about that. They won't have that. And they'll be out there. And you know where they'll get their information from? It won't even be from adults at school. It will be from other kids, their age, maybe older, who tells them, yeah, it's okay. I did it. Go ahead and do it. Far more today, even than a couple of years ago, kids really listen to other children. And there comes a time in every child's life that their peers become more important to them than their parents. But I think what we're doing, we're extending that far beyond when it should be, because, again, we're not talking to our children and giving them that foundation in which to grow from. And they're turning to the only people that they know to turn to, other kids who, have told them, yeah, I'm really smart. I know what I'm doing. And we all know that isn't true. There are smart kids, don't get me wrong, but again, they haven't had the life experience that most adults have had. And those are the people that are telling your kids what they should do. They're the role models, and you should be the role model for your kid. Now, why am I spending so much time on this today? Well, my goal is to start to crack that long, progressive trail that has been laid for years, 100 years or more. You've got to start cracking that armor, if you will, or it's never going to be broken. We're going to continue down this path in the progressive way, and we're going to get even more sidetracked and even worse as we go, because I don't think we've seen anything yet of how bad it could really go, whether it's our kids that we're talking about or something else. But if we stay on this path, if we believe the progressives, if we're okay and we remain silent, then absolutely nothing is going to change for the better. And I know some of the parents listening, it's probably hard for you to think about having these talks with your children, maybe be even overwhelming for you. Take your time, go slow. Take 5-10 minutes. Just start the conversation until you get more comfortable. And I think for others, start out with your children as young as possible, talking about important things, but do it in an age-appropriate manner, of course. You don't want to talk to them about, the nuclear weapons that Iran has, when they're 3. You get what I'm saying. It's got to be age-appropriate. But if you start out young like that, talking to them, training them, teaching them, giving them that strong foundation, then as they get older, you've already had these quote-unquote uncomfortable conversations. They won't be uncomfortable. They will be very comfortable. It will be very natural, as I really believe that it should be. Our kids need to hear these things. We need to teach them these things. Parents need to be the role model for their own children, not having total strangers. No matter how well teachers, how prepared they are, how they may be wanting to do the right thing, they're not the parents of these children. You are the parent of your child. They look up to you. They're waiting for you to impart your wisdom on them. I know it doesn't seem like sometimes that they're waiting for your wisdom, but they are. That's why you're a parent. You are so necessary. And so, as hard as it may be to be starting when they're 13, 14, when they really don't want to hear what you have to say, you got to have that conversation. Otherwise, you're going to be sending them off down the road, perhaps to a college. Most likely it's going to be a liberal college unless you choose a more conservative one, or they choose a different path. And they're going to be totally unprepared. They're going to be hook, line, and sinker into the progressive left way of thinking because they haven't been taught any different from you. You are the leader. You are the ones that they are looking for their hope. Give them that hope. Give them that direction. Be the best parent you can be, and they will be the best adults that they can be. I thank you so much for listening today. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope these conversations help. I hope they help and encourage you each and every day. I do want to bring things like that to you, not just what's in the news, but what is valuable for your life. So until next time, be kind to yourself. Be compassionate towards others. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you again next week. Until then, take care.